Hello and welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show live. We're taking a look at all things Leeds United. Joining us very shortly will be Jayson Booker, but in the meantime, I've got Tom Carnduff on from Sporting Life. Tom, how are we doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad, thank you.
Yeah, crazy days to say the least. Me and Jace, we did a big match review after the Bournemouth game, but just wanted to get your take on that Bournemouth game, Tom.
Yeah, what can you say? It's the must-win game, wasn't it? And to not only lose, but to lose by such a margin. I think so much the result, probably the aftermath of it, really summed up where Leeds are at in terms of the reaction from fans, the players, just everything alike. It truly was probably the worst it's been in a few years, and obviously the events of the days that followed it afterwards are clearly as to why. But yeah, just an awful performance and just exactly showing where they were going. After that, what was an initially good start under Grazia, that's just looks years ago in comparison with where they're at now.
Yeah, absolutely dead and buried. We've got Jason on the show as well. Jason, how are we doing, mate? Oh, we can't hear you, mate. Classic move. Obviously, so much has happened. I mean, where to even start with it all, Tom? It's absolutely bonkers at the minute. But Bournemouth game finishes. A lot of people start calling for Gracia to leave, just saying he can't do any more. And then incredibly, I think what was it, the Monday or whenever it was that it came out, or Sunday, Sam Allardyce, Big Sam, the man to take the reins. It's not confirmed yet, but it's probably there tomorrow, we hope, or not hope, depending on your point of view. But just
Yeah,
your reaction to Big Sam at Ellen Road potentially.
I mean, it's funny, if you're otherwise it's a laugh or your cry situation, isn't it? Really, how they've just ended up in this. I mean, it's a long running reason as to why they're here, but it's the ultimate desperation move, isn't it? It's effectively 3 games to win because one of those is Man City away. And I mean, yesterday in the office, we were talking about potentially the Premier League record win and stuff like that, and the way
Yeah.
Leeds are going defensively in this Man City attack. You're thinking it could possibly happen here. So maybe I'm not as confident that'll happen now. So there's a positive in a way like that. But yeah, it's just a desperation move, isn't it? And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then I mean, it can't get any worse than it is currently, isn't it? So as long as it is strictly a 4 game only thing, and that's just reassess in the summer, then it is what it is, isn't it? It just cannot physically get any worse than it is because they're conceding 4 goals every game at the moment. So why not just go for the desperation route, throw the Hail Mary and hope that someone catches it and you stay up?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Rennie High from Texas, guys. I'm so relieved to see the back of Orta. Yeah, we will be getting into the Orta stuff as well. Jason, Sam Allardyce is nearly over the line.
Can you hear me now, yeah?
Your take on it, mate. Your take on it.
We've thrown the Sam Allardyce. I love that. I love that
Yeah,
saying. I've heard it a couple of times. I mean, mate, when we spoke a couple of days ago, I said it to you, didn't I? I says, maybe even Sam, threw it out there as a pure, just radical kind of throw something at the wall and hope it sticks kind of idea. And I think that's what it is. I think, as Tom's just said, it can't be any worse than what it's been. Like, at the end of the day, we might as well throw the roulette wheel and hope it lands on 0. That's how I feel about it. You know what I mean? It feels like a 1 in a million chance. The kind of maths, if you like, that I put to it is I was a 0% chance of us staying up confidence-wise, and now I've got 5%. That's how I feel about it. Like, I know it's not much, but it's something. Can he S-house his way to 4 points? I believe he probably could. I believe he could. Like, I'm not saying he will, but I believe there's a chance that he could. I can't believe it. Like, I cannot. Like, in my logical brain says that this makes absolutely no sense. How have we gone from Bielsa and the dream and that football to this in less than 18 months is absolutely nuts. Like, I literally was saying to Brownie last night, Tom, I was sat by myself last night just giggling to myself like a mad hatter. Like, I'm just giggling at the fact that this is reality.
It's kind of lightened the mood, don't you think? It's kind of
Yeah.
lightened the vibe a little bit. It's like Big Sam. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. If you'd have said 14 months ago when Bielsa was still at the club, we'd be having Big Sam in charge, we would not have believed it. Rennie's getting on board though. I'm going all in on Big Sam. What else can we do? Exactly. Guys, watching the video, sorry, just smash a like on it. Please subscribe to the channel. Get your comments in. Sorry, Jace.
No, sorry, my fault. Joe Wayman said, well, if nothing else, it's funny. Like, it's just funny. And I think that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, it makes sense. It makes some sort of logical sense, given the position that we've put ourselves in. It was the only decision left for Gracia to go. I'm surprised that Orta's gone so quickly. I'm glad it's the right decision, but I didn't expect that to come with the same news. I thought it'd kind of we'd not hear anything of him until the end of the season, and then he'd have just drifted away. That's kind of how I thought that was going to kind of go down. But yeah, Big Sam, Big Sam.
And big deal as well, Tom. Potentially £3 million he could earn, £500,000 basic fee, and then a 2.5 million bonus if he keeps us up. I mean, it's just eye-watering, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, and it's kind of what we knew already. It's a desperation move, isn't it? And that just further underlines it, how desperate they are to stay in the Premier League and the finances that come with it. I think it's not so much that it's Sam Allardyce, it's just the fact that it's Leeds now that it's ended up at. I don't think we particularly would expect Leeds to fall into that with the way they've operated in the past kind of few years. Obviously, moving on from Bielsa, but in terms of the transfer market and stuff like that, they would never really get drawn into the games that came with it. I mean, you could touch on certain players and the fees and stuff like that, but in terms of the way they operated, it was never really like that. So, an absolutely huge amount of money. The incentives there for him, if it wasn't already. He loves the firefight anyway, doesn't he? But absolutely huge amount of money, and yeah, it's just a clear indication of the situation they've got themselves in. They need to fork out £3 million for a month's work. I mean, we could all. It's all right if you can get it. To be fair,
put my hand up for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what though, Tom? It's Radrizzani and Orta's pure arrogance that has put us in this position where we are scrapping around for Sam to come in with 4 games to go. Because you're absolutely right. Like, we don't operate like this usually, and we didn't. It looked like we wanted to operate like that when we brought Gracia in. We wanted Iriola, we wanted Giardo, we wanted Arnie Slot, and that all made kind of transitional sense. When we went into it with the arrogance that these people were going to leave comfortable jobs, successful positions to come and join a relegation battle in February, that's what put us in the position where we were left with 5th or 6th choice Gracia, and now with 4 games to go, Sam Allardyce. Because it just don't make any sense, does it?
Well, it's Gracia was the desperation option, wasn't he? Like you said there, Gracia was the desperation option, and then February, end of that, so 2 and a bit months later, you're basically admitting the desperation option needs to be a bit more desperate, and you've ended up going to Sam Allardyce. It's remarkable, but to his credit, there's a reason why the joke is that Sam Allardyce comes in at the end and saves these teams, because record at Palace and Everton were his 2 jobs before West Brom, wasn't it? Actually good numbers, as much as you can kind of joke around about him and stuff like that, and the kind of how to put it, the kind of figure that he's seen as or portrays himself as, is talked about in a way, is not quite true in certain elements of it. He's quite an advanced coach in terms of the way he looks at metrics and things like that, and looks at the data and things like that. So yeah, it's a reason why he's got what he does. And look, if it works, doesn't it? But like we said at the top, it can't get any worse than it is currently, because the one thing Leeds had going in their favour was it was a pretty good goal difference, which was basically an extra point. 4 weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago, that is long gone, and now they're on the other end of it, where similar to last season, the goal difference is so bad you're almost a point behind some teams.
Yeah, I think there is a slightly unfair stigma attached to Sam as well. I'm not going to be revisionist now and start changing history, but the facts are is he was way beyond his time on video analysis and things like that. Tactically set up in a certain way to suit the players that he had. He played, this kind of gets lost at Bolton. He brought in some flair players like JJ Kocher and players like that don't play long ball, defensive rear guard action football. That's just not the style of football that players like that would play. But yet he was able to attract players like that. And it weren't just JJ Kocher. There were several names in that Bolton team that would have been considered flair and attractive players to watch on the eye. So I do think there is a bit of an unfair stigma around him. But that being said, he also has a reputation for saving teams for a reason. And, one of his key points is getting clean sheets. Let's look at that first. So
he gets a clean sheet with this team, blind. He deserves every penny, I think.
I mean,
sorry.
I was going to say, just on that point, the defensive thing, isn't it? That's a huge problem. Leeds have had the Premier League's worst defence since being promoted, and it's never got better. And fundamentally, you're going to have to bite the bullet and say it's an issue. And they've kind of tried to ignore it and hide it and hope it goes away. I know it's only 4 games, but if that's what you do, then that's what you've got to do to stay up.
They were talking about it on... I've watched so much content today that I can't remember whose is what, but they were talking about Orta not signing defenders or not being good at signing defenders. And literally, the only name that I could come up with that was successful under Orta was Ben White. I can't think of another successful defensive signing, really. Robin Koch, Diego Llorente, Rasmus Christensen, Junior Firpo. You carry on going through that list and you can't find one. You literally can't find one. Yeah, the names that would be somewhat semi-reliable for us over the last couple of years are the boys that were there before him, who shouldn't still be here. So,
no, it's a good point.
It's nuts when you think about it. So,
what do we think about? I mean, the one glaring omission on Allardyce's perfect relegation battle CV is that West Brom relegation that he suffered, and I read somewhere he got something like four wins in his last 30 games as a manager, and some of the stats are pretty damning as well. So between Allardyce's first game in charge of West Brom, they completed the fewest passes, had the worst passing accuracy, played the highest percentage of long passes, and probably the most concerning one is conceded the most goals in the Premier League. Is that a major red flag for you guys? I mean, it's the most recent one. I mean, has the game moved on since even his days at Newcastle and the other great jobs that he did? I don't know who wants to pick that up first.
I mean, it's tricky, isn't it? The West Brom one, you've got to factor in the squad he inherited. I know it's easy to say this, and Leeds are in the exact same situation, but not quite as bad. I mean, when he turned up, West Brom had won 1 game all season. They were in an absolute state when he inherited it. It was a team that weren't going anywhere. I think, what was it? He turned up about the December. They'd beat Sheffield United, who again had their own issues, and then I think they'd got a couple of draws. And then he started with some incredibly difficult games. I think they had Liverpool. They had maybe Arsenal turned up as well. Leeds obviously turned up and completely tore them apart, the Hawthorns, and that was a Leeds team who were really going in that first part of the season. So not only that, they were starting to win games. They were avoiding defeats more crucially. The thing is it's obviously he had a half a season at Leeds. He's going to have 4 games. So I think there's some context needed on that West Brom one, and the fact that he inherited such a mess at the time that I think, they probably got, was it about 6-7 points when he turned up at the end of December? Not great going. So to make them somewhat semi-competitive at times, I mean, didn't they turn up to Stamford Bridge and beat Chelsea quite convincingly in that season as well? So he inherited a squad that were in a lot worse of a position than Leeds are at the moment. They were just way down there, a lot worse than what he's probably inheriting here.
I tend to agree with that. I think the West Brom spell is a really difficult kind of yardstick to tell us what he has left in the modern game, whatever that kind of is. I'm just looking at it here, and he got 12 results out of 26 games if you include the draws that he got. So, sorry, just 1 second. So I personally think that is still a fairly decent yardstick to say that he improved on what was there before, because they, as Tom said, were miles off it. 8 draws, 4 wins, 14 losses in 26 games for West Brom. Maybe it was, I don't know. I think it's it's just impossible to kind of compare that. But then the worry is that the last time he had a significant role before that was 2018. It's quite a long time ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
what do you think he'll do, Tom, in terms of the team? What do you expect in terms of formation, personnel? I mean, in terms of improving the defence, there's not a lot to work with, is there really?
No, I suppose it's the attitude that you approach it with. I mean, it's anyone's guess at the moment, isn't it? We've only basically just worked out what the best team for Grazia is to start playing, and then suddenly someone else is in. Whether he goes to a 5 at the back, I'm not too sure. I think it's probably more the fundamentals in doing so. You can't expect this to be a Leeds team who will be tippy-tappy was the word that he's used in the past, hasn't he? And play around with the ball a little bit too much. It's just that kind of approach to the game rather than the personnel. It's anyone's guess, isn't it? It is anyone's guess, really, what he's going to do. It's going to be some form of a 4-4-2, 4-3-3, you imagine, and you go from there. But yeah, it's anyone's guess at the moment, and it's absolutely anyone's guess.
What do you think, Jason? Do you think he'll, I don't know, perhaps promote some of the younger players? I mean, do you think he'll frighten them? Do you think he'll be kind of the polar opposite in terms of Grassy? I feel like he'll give them a good bollocking if it needs be.
I think there'll be some players that don't even know who he is, if I'm honest. I think some of the youngers won't have a clue who he is. No, I'm being deadly serious. Like, you know, some players really are certainly disconnected from, you know, certainly when he was at his pomp. Like, I think of Sam Allardyce and I think of Bolton. That's what I think of.
Yeah, dancing with the culture.
Yeah, like I do. So I think there will be some players that are kind of like, and I think some of the olders, I think, you know, Luke Ayling, Liam Cooper, I think will respect him, and I think he'll get a decent tune out of some of them. What he'll do, I definitely think he'll get under the skin, and I think regardless, I don't think he will go in with anything other than, I'm ex-England manager. I've got a pedigree. I can help out with this. Listen to what I say and we'll get results. I think he will have that kind of confidence and almost an arrogance that he needs to have to try and make this a success. And I think players will listen to him. What my concern with him is what does he have to at his disposal to use tactically to make it that much better? Like, you know, for us with Sam, it's very much rearguard action, get it long, towards a target man, into wingers that run in behind. We have some of that, but we also don't have some of that. We don't have resolute defenders, really, on the whole. The ones that we do break down in Verber and Cooper, you know, they'll both throw themselves in front of everything. They will, but they're both, you know, injury prone. And then we don't have the target man striker that I think a Sam Allardyce tactic really needs. But if he can just get an extra 20% out of them in terms of effort and commitment and make us a little bit more resolute at the back, he has the balls to make decisions like dropping Illan Meslier when he really, really needs to be dropped. I think we might be able to just sneak 4 points, maybe. I'm not saying I think this will happen, but there's a chance. I'm saying there's a chance. There's a chance it might happen. That's where I'm at. So I think
it does feel like a shot in the arm, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think we'll set up 4-4-2. I do. I think Forshaw will play. I think Forshaw will start over McKennie. I don't think McKennie will be a Sam player. I think he'll be watching the games that McKennie's not produced in, and he'll be just like, nah, he ain't for me. I think Forshaw and Rocker will probably play in there. He might put a young lad in there as well and go for 3. But I can see it being wingers being vital. If we're going to, and so they should be because they're our best players. That's where we have the best chance of hurting teams. I think Rodrigo and Pat will both play. I think they'll both start. And the defence will be very much instructed to miss the midfield, aim for the throwing line, where they'll hope Pat will win flick-ons and we'll play off second balls. That's how he doesn't have time to do anything else. So, yeah.
What do you think you do against Man City, Tom? I mean, is it just a game you just go, I'll forget it. Just forget it. Doesn't matter.
I mean, yeah, what can you do? They're the best team in Europe. I mean, Arsenal are 3-0 up currently, so they know they need to win, which is annoying to get back on top. But it's what can you do? They're the best team. A freakishly good attack that they've then added to a freakish striker too. There's not a great deal you can do. The one thing I suppose that they are quite vulnerable at, and that you use that quite loosely, Manchester City, is, I mean, historically, it's been an issue recently, is the counter-attacks. They're being caught out at the back. They have been got out. Teams have done that. You just need to get a little bit of luck. Effectively, like the first season when Leeds went there, they had a lot of luck that day, and they got the breaks twice when they needed them, and they took them both. So I think you can't particularly look at this Manchester City game as part of that final run. If they fluke something and get something brilliant as an extra point, whatever, it's the 3 games afterwards where really they're looking for probably 4 points out of it and then hoping kind of results go their way as well. So almost the Man City one's probably a good test of character for him to know the squad that he's dealing with. Wouldn't be surprised to see him go for maybe Verber and Cooper as a partnership, even though they're both left footers, just in terms of players that he could probably trust. The one player I'm interested in is Jorginho Ruta, to see what he kind of gets out of this in a weird way. That kind of direct football, runners off it, the wingers and stuff like that. More of a mobile striker, whether he'll benefit from what would be more of a partnership, if it's a 4-4-2 or a variation of a 4-2-3-1 or what. But
I was thinking,
Tom, just a bonus game, isn't it?
I was thinking with regards, just coming back to team selection again, Rutter's a great shout, because I think he's actually better in the air than Pat. I think he's actually all right in the air. From what we've seen, the bits that we've seen, would it be absolutely mental to go for a partnership of Rutter and Nonto up front and then Harrison and Somerville on the wings? Because you've got to then believe you're getting a bit of pace in behind, because both Jorginho and Willie are quick. And you have 4 attacking outlets for that long ball over the top to potentially get in behind teams. I could see that being something that he will consider. I still think he'll go with Pat, but I can, just with you mentioning Rutter, I can see that being a potential.
I mean, if you're going to go for that style of football, you need players who are quite lively anyway, don't you? We talk about kind of Rutter in the air, but mentioned there were Nonto, Rutter, Somerville, Harrison, whoever the wingers are. That if you're getting the ball in that area of the pitch, you need players who are kind of live-wise almost, just to make almost a bit of chaos happen in certain games. That's probably the way they're going to have to look at this. Just get the ball forward, get it as quickly forward as quickly as possible, and then cause issues when you're up there. Really hassle the opposition defence, try and make them feel uncomfortable. The likes of West Ham, Tottenham as well. We've seen them defensively, and geez, their season's petering out massively. They might have nothing to play for come that game at Ellen Road. That it's not necessarily a bad thing to do so. Like we say, it's a mystery at this point. He's probably just working out who his squad is. I think he'll know certain players. Certain players, the likes of Adam Forshaw. I think you kind of look at the leadership type figures. You're going to be bringing them in just because you can trust them at this point, and just see what happens from there. But yeah, anyone's guessing at selection.
Absolutely. I know we haven't got long left with you, Tom. Just before I go, I just want to get your take on Victor Orta is left by mutual consent. What do you make of it, and what do you think his legacy at Leeds is?
Yeah, it's, again, something that needed to happen. I think you look at the reaction of the crowd in recent weeks and kind of where the anger has been directed from the away, and it's been towards Victor Orta, right? It hasn't been. It's kind of to, I think the trio of them as they're put together, but largely it's been towards Victor Orta. And fundamentally, the statement confirmed it. He is the one in charge of staff, of, players, managers, things like that, coaches, everything, football operations runs through him. So when the football hasn't been great, the results haven't been great, you've spent big money on players who haven't produced, particularly with what is expected to be a new ownership come in. It's all just a whole cauldron of factors that just aren't working in his favour whatsoever. So it's a change that needed to happen, because managers come and go, and for me this was the big story of the day, that Victor Orta's left. That Sam Allardyce is going to come in, and great, funny, whatever. But managers come and go all the time. This is basically an admission from Leeds that this way is not working anymore. We can't operate like this. I'm not saying they'll go away from a director of football. They may well look for replacements. But if it's an acceptance that at the top level we have got things wrong, that these things haven't gone as they should have. And I mean, not to plug my own work, but I went through a thing rating every Leeds signing under Victor Orta today. And I think I counted 51 that you could say. 51. If you go on to sportinglife.com, it's all on there. So basically a little verdict on everything. But if you go, I think I attributed about 51 players that I'd say were for senior. I think I got 15 you could count as hits, really kind of players who made the most. a lot unclear, and most of them being misses, particularly in that early days. So you look at the recruitment, and yes, brought Bielsa to the club, but you feel a lot of the positive changes that happened at the time were due to Marcelo Bielsa, weren't they, rather than anything else. So yeah, it's a necessary change that had to go, and we see what comes of it with impending new ownership. Potentially there's more to come, but yeah, for me, the top line, it's an admission that we've got things wrong, things needed to change, and why wait until the summer? Why wait until the summer? If you're going to do it, you may as well go for it now, because it's kind of the one figure that a lot of the anger has been directed towards.
I think there's definitely an angle that getting rid of Victor Orta before 2 massive home games was thought about. From a crowd perspective and the animosity that had been shown, there can be now no shade thrown really towards the board, because there's not what we can do about Radrizzani. He's here as long as he decides to be, until he sells his share in the club. We can start, being toxic towards him if we want, but it doesn't really make any sense. And I think fans as a whole understand that. Whereas Victor was always dispensable. The manager is always dispensable. The players you can always show frustration towards because they're actively doing it on the pitch or not. So I think I think from that perspective, again, it gives us the best opportunity to potentially throw something out of the bag here.
Do you think, though, with losing your director of football, it's a few weeks before the end of the season? I mean, we talk about planning. I mean, what is going to be happening on that side now? How quickly can you get a director of football in? Who's going to even own the club? I mean, that's really messy to go into the summer with, surely.
I don't think they've gone that far.
Yeah. To be honest, I think it would have been something that came up in terms of conversations with the 2 ownership groups at the moment, and kind of how it works. Naturally there'll be an interim, someone acting in that role, whether someone else absorbs it at board level or someone else just steps up from that department. We'll see. But I think obviously the summer's irrelevant, because they'll have 2 scouting lists as ever. When you're in this situation, there'll be a Premier League list and a Championship list. You kind of know the rough targets that you will be going for. But at this stage, it's just getting to the end of May. It's such a short-term thing, as reflected in Allardyce's appointment at the club. Nobody's thinking that long-term at the moment. It's let's get to the summer, let's see where we're at with the ownership group, and let's kind of work from there. Because this is all that matters to the ownership at the moment. It's staying in the Premier League, because it's worth just a staggering amount of money to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem a club very divided on every level at the moment. You've got the ownership issue, where apparently there's tensions that have risen. Some board members wanting to make this decision, other board members wanting to make a different decision. Victor Orta, apparently, I mean, some of the players have come out social media with pictures. Even Click came out with a picture with himself with Orta. But I've heard that some first-team players not keen on him. Where do you go in terms of a director of football? Where do you even start to? I mean, it's almost deciding what path you want to go down as a club, isn't it? But it's so difficult.
I can't believe that Victor Orta has the reputation that he does. I mean, there was the link with Chelsea, wasn't there? Not so long back. They were going to go there. I can only anticipate really that the 49ers will probably, if they take over, they will have their guy that they have already probably earmarked to look after that affairs, because they won't know football. That's not how it works. They will have their man that they will pay to employ to do Victor Orta's job. I don't think the recruitment process around it is the same as a physio or a scout or even a manager or an assistant manager. It's a little bit different, isn't it? There'll be relationships that have been stoked up probably for years and years. So, but again, I don't think we've thought that far ahead right now. I think Radz's situation hangs in the balance as to what league we're in. I think he sells us if we stay up, and I think he stays if we go down. I think he'll want to crack at it for a year. I do. I feel almost certain he will, because he will back himself and whoever he employs around him to be able, with parachute payments, players that he'll stay on and all the rest of it, to be able to get us back up at the first chance of asking. And that doing that will probably be worth 300 million quid to him or something. So it'll be worth spinning it for him. maybe restructure another deal with the 49ers where in another year's time, if we're still not promoted, you get the club at another 50 million less than what they will have to pay if we go down this summer. Something along them lines. I can see it now.
It just needs to be a clear structure, doesn't it, in terms of, and a clear plan in terms of what's going on, because I mean, this has probably been an issue for Leeds for a year, and I'm sure it's the same in any business where there's two ownership groups in this situation, but it's more so that the minority owner knows it's going to be the majority owner at some stage, and all future decisions that they are doing will now drastically affect them in their majority ownership. You look at the transfer windows that have been a godly amount of money spent. It's not so much signing these players because there's an understanding that the new ownership group will absorb a lot of the contracts and they'll be the one making the payments. It's then who puts up the initial fee to do so. And then there's back and forth, and then there's arguments. And Jesse Marsh, one group wants him to stay, one group wants him to go. You kind of have to understand that while you're in one position, you have to accept the future and the way it's coming, and the decisions you make have a bigger impact on the future than they do on the present. So there just needs to be that kind of agreement as soon as possible, particularly if it's going to be this summer, that there needs to be something, doesn't it, as early as possible, because the longer it drags on, the more these problems become more prominent, the more that, they're there and you have to deal with them.
Yeah, I just don't see how Radrizzani can recover from this, though. I mean, if we go down and he wants another shot at it, I just don't think the fans are going to accept it. I really don't. I think it's going to be toxic from the off, because who's going to be making the football decisions? We won't have a manager.
There's a problem, isn't it? Because there's an expectation, isn't there, that this is going to happen. This is not like this is a, shock out of nowhere takeover. This has been looming for years now. People are expecting it to happen this summer. And whether rightly or wrongly, but anytime there's new takeover talks, if your club's not in a state of administration, the expectation is that when you're taken over, that suddenly there'll be big spending, there'll be lots of money, there'll be recruitment and stuff like that. If it doesn't happen, then instantly people, whether they should have hyped themselves up like that or not, they're not going to be happy. So yeah, it's a tricky one, because people are expecting this and fans are expecting this to happen. Whether they want it to happen or not is another debate. But the fact is that people think this is coming this summer. So then to suddenly change the picture, and fair enough that they turn around at the same announcement and say, okay, this is our new director of football, this is our such and such, this is our such and such, then people are probably willing to be more accepting of it. But yeah, it's just like anything, that there needs to be a clear future direction. And as long as that's communicated both internally and externally very well, I think fans will probably be quite tolerant of whichever the outcome is, as long as they can see a clear path to the next 3, 5, 10 years, whatever it may be.
Yeah, indeed. Kind of looking ahead then, in the summer, is the Championship as bad as we fear in your eyes? I mean, me and Jason have said previously we just do not want to go down, even though now it feels almost inevitable. But the Championship is a scary place. I don't want to go back there. Is it as bad as we fear, Tom?
No, it's great. But I say the same as the Premier League. It's great if you're not in it, because you can just watch it. I mean, this is the most wonderful time of the year now, the playoffs. It's brilliant to watch. It was absolute hell when your team's in it. I think for Leeds, if it does happen, there's probably a similar situation to where Burnley were at last summer in terms of a new ownership group. Of course, there were differing questions that surrounded Burnley, which evidently haven't become true. But they saw it as an opportunity to really have a complete reset of how they do things. Sean Dyche had gone. They welcomed in a completely different style, took a gamble on Vincent Kompany that paid off in a very significant way. They made an exciting young squad that played very, very good football, one of the best teams in the country in context of the level that they're at. And then it obviously reaped the rewards, and even them, the marketing, the social media, everything about the club had a complete change. And suddenly fans were, I'm not saying they never were offside for Burnley, of course, they're always going to stick with them, but suddenly people are then back on side, and then the positive atmosphere goes, and from minute one, you're suddenly up there. And it looked clear that Burnley were going to go up and probably win the league throughout the entire season. Leeds are in a pretty similar situation to that, especially with this expected takeover coming in the summer or in the next 12 months. So there is a positive on that as well. And frankly, as bad as some of the Leeds squad is, there's some really good young players in it. There's some very, very, very good Championship level players in there. And the Championship's not a great standard league. I think particularly for the last few years, it's probably suffered in terms of genuine quality. I think the last probably top level Championship, if you can say it, was the year where Sheffield United and Norwich beat Leeds to promotion. I think that was probably the last one we could say it was a genuinely quite difficult league. And I'm not saying it's not now, but I think for a team coming down into it, if you don't do the likes of a Watford and get things wrong, you've got a great chance of bouncing back. And we're seeing it with some of those, even Burnley, who at one point in the summer, early on, you thought they're going to be absolutely nowhere near it. And for a team like that or a club like that to be able to turn it around in such dramatic circumstances or such a big way is kind of a good blueprint and a good vote of confidence for anyone who goes down. So, yeah, while Leeds will want to stay up, they'll have a great chance next season. They should have a great chance next season if they can get it right. So, yeah, don't fear it as much as possible. And you'll get loads of tickets to Blackburn away and stuff like that. So, you've got to take it for what it is.
Silver linings.
Yeah, exactly.
What about this one, Jason? Joe, would Arsene Wenger come back and manage one more time? How old is Wenger now? He must be 73 or something, 74 or something.
He's making up daft rules at FIFA, isn't he? That's what he's doing now. He's just making up daft things all the time. So I think he's too happy creating a World Cup every 5 minutes or whatever he is doing at the moment.
What do you think, Jason, in terms of the next manager, the next full-time manager, depending what league we're in, obviously, where would you like to see Leeds? What direction? Youth, kind of a Vincent Kompany up-and-comer, or experience?
It's so hard to say, isn't it, mate, with regards to what the next step is now, because we don't know who's even going to be running the club. What Tom has just, kind of explained there is absolutely the truth, but it all comes from having good leadership up at the top. The reason that we were able to create the vibes that we have and had the success that we have was because Marcelo Bielsa was running our club. That's how I now see it. I truly believe that Bielsa was really in charge of the majority of what mattered, from behind the scenes to then being on the pitch. And the board allowed him to do that because of the type of manager that he was. They put full faith in it and it worked. We're not going to be lucky enough to have that again. I mean, managers like that don't exist anymore. It's from a different breed. Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger, probably of a similar kind of nature. So you then need to hope that the people that are on top have what it takes to be able to run a football club properly. And if if Rads does have another year where he stays around, I really worry about where we'll be next season, because I'd worry that he'd stick in on players that he shouldn't to keep him around because he doesn't get the market value that he thinks that he should get. And then we have a situation where we're having players playing on the weekly that don't really care, that don't want to be there, don't want to play Championship football, are on reduced wages because the contracts have automatically reduced, so that they're not even happy with what they're earning. International recognition comes into it. There's all these factors that I see attached to it. If the transfer goes through, we're talking fully on relegation here. If the sale of the club does go through, I could see a world in which we bring in the right manager, a young upcoming manager that is fresh with ideas that could potentially get us playing on the pitch right, and then the recruitment hopefully would be done right as well. Staying up, I think, is a far more easier picture to see. Personally, I said it to you the other day. I think it's far easier to finish 17th every year than it is to finish in one of the promotion spots in the Championship. That's just how I see it. I think whether it's via the playoffs or whether it's via the top two, I think that is far more difficult than being able to get enough points on the board to finish 17th. So I would much rather have that world, as much as it can be painful, where we can build and hopefully start progressing with Premier League money, Premier League attraction, the players that can come with that, and eke towards finishing top 10, than try and go through that again. Personally,
I think the thing for Leeds, though, I think that if it does happen, and to be honest, you've got to look at it now, the predictive models and stuff like that, the advanced data, it's pointing towards Leeds over Nottingham Forest now. That's the reality of the situation that it's in. This Leeds squad and kind of the value and the investments that they've made, and I think even like Anonto, I'm not too sure if clubs would be willing to take a punt just yet. Those clubs who are looking at someone like a Nonto, where they'd give him another year. I think if you broke down the squad of who would probably stay around, the additions that can be made, a semi-decent manager would probably do a good job and would probably get top 6 minimum in that situation, although the aim would always be top 2. Last time, before Bielsa, the season before Bielsa, and again, goes back to that piece I was looking at earlier, you look at some of the players that were going there, it's no wonder Leeds weren't scoring goals when it was Kalabek Iban, Pavel Chibitsky, Pierre-Michel Lasogga, Erjan Alioski was playing further forward at that point, wasn't he? It just was not anywhere near the standard of a squad that needed to be at the top end of the league, which is what they'd have now, plus, the inevitable kind of few that would come in. It's not a great situation, and you never want your team to go down, but if it does happen, I think there's some reasons to be confident on the pitch, even if there's a bit of uncertainty about what happens above.
Tom, just before we let you go, will Leeds stay up?
Yeah, let's finish on a high. Yes, because I watch so many other teams who are awful, also terrible. So hopefully Leeds can be the less terrible of all the teams down there.
Fantastic. We love it. There we go. Nice bit of positivity before me and Jason crack on with the
oh, dear.
Tom, we really appreciate you coming on, mate. Good to hear your thoughts on it. And we'll see where we are next time we chat. You never know. Big Sam could do the business. But
could beat Man City. Could beat Man City, eh? Keep the faith.
Can you imagine? Thanks a lot, Tom. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.
See you, Tom.
There we go. Tom Carnduff from Sporting Life. Tom mentioned he was doing an article reviewing Victor Orta's signings, which you can get on the Sporting Life website, which I think will be a fascinating read. I think he said he worked out probably about 15 out of the 50 were what you could call successful. So there you go. If you're watching the video, please smash a like on it. Also get your comments in as well. We've got Sam Allardyce coming in, Victor Orta going out, and we've got Man City at the weekend. Rennie, I just can't see Rads taking the financial hit if we get relegated. I see him staying and trying to get them promoted again, which echoes what you've said, Jason. I just think he can't stay. I mean, you almost think, is it worth the abuse and the criticism? And obviously it's large sums of money involved, but if it doesn't, I mean, if we didn't go up, he's just going to lose more and more money.
Well, I mean, again, it depends on his arrogance a little bit, doesn't it? You're talking about 300 million quid difference. That's why this 5 million quid or whatever Allardyce is getting to keep us up is a flash in the pan. He really wants to sell us this year. He wants to go and buy Inter Milan, doesn't he? That's the dream for Rads. And fair play to him. Like, he's a good businessman. Like, he is. So, for him to have another year where he throws everything, he could easily put 100 million quid into a promotion push, and it still be better off for him to the tune of about 250 million quid. So I just think it makes too much sense for him to stay around another year if we get relegated, and he really doesn't want that, which is why he's throwing this last chance. He knows that Orta's position had become untenable. There's no way that he could have stayed around for another year in the Premier League or Championship. There's no way. So he was on a hiding to nothing to sack him. It was the right thing to do. And I think, this move from a management perspective is the right one. I definitely see him staying another year if we go down. I wouldn't want that, but that's what I see happening. And it'd be I don't know what it'd be. I mean, I would just hope that he would then say to the 49ers, look, regardless of what happens, you have a deal in place that you buy Leeds United for this amount if we get promoted this year, or this amount if we stay in this division again. It's written in blood that I will sell to you for this amount or this amount, regardless of if we fail or not. And it'll be this amount or this amount. And then at least the 49ers would potentially have a position to say, fine, this is the sporting director, this is the head of recruitment that we are saying that we want in charge. That's what I would be hopeful would happen if Rads are insisting on another year, another whip at it. But yeah, I definitely see him staying if we go down.
Yeah, absolutely. Dad, we're a meme club. Yeah, it does feel like that. We've just become the joke again, haven't we? I mean, even when we were getting battered last year, we took some big scorelines scorelines where I'm just glad I'm not at school anymore. Can you imagine if you're still going to school and turning up and your mates support Manchester United and all this? I can't be doing with that. Elsewhere, Amy, Sam might just save us, fingers crossed. Yeah, we hope so.
I feel like I said earlier, I've got like a 5 to 10% optimism that we might.
It's gone up to 10% now.
5 to 10. 5%, I'm not saying it's 10.
Hang on.
That's where I feel like we're at. Like, I think to myself logically, could I see Sam being able to get us 4 points out of the remaining 4 games? And the answer that I give to that question is yes. Now, I'm not saying he will, but I can see it happening. I can see him being able to take a point from Newcastle even. I can see him going to West Ham and being able to do something there. I can see him beating Spurs on the last game of the season. I can see it happening. So if that's the way that I'm feeling about it, then the answer that I have to say is there is a chance now, whereas we were just idly walking into relegation under Gracia.
100%. One comparison that has crossed my mind about this West Brom thing is, you know how Roy Hodgson turned up at Watford last year and he just basically didn't give a damn. And Watford just went down. I almost feel like it was similar for Allardyce at West Brom. It was just like, I feel with Leeds, it doesn't matter what state Leeds are in. A meme club, for example, it doesn't matter what state we're in. I think particularly for managers of a generation, people of a certain age, like an Allardyce who will have grown up, Revy so many idols, what a great team it was. I think Leeds are still something special to those type of managers. And I think I'm hoping that gives him that extra 5-10% that perhaps he didn't have at West Brom, even though it is just 4 games.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. I thought the same myself earlier. I don't think Sam will be approaching this with the same mindset as what he approached West Brom. I think the West Brom job was just another job. He was probably paid quite handsomely for it. I don't think that even though this is only 4 games, I don't think he'll see it in the same way. I think he will want to I think he'll want to prove a lot of people wrong. I think he'll want to either finish his career now on a high. There's a lot of money riding on it as well, and we know he likes a pound note. Like I hear you completely. And I think he'll be absolutely buzzing to be the manager of Leeds United and walk out at Ellen Road for them 2 games that we've got at home. So I can see that, and I can see him absolutely giving it 100% to try and make it happen and writing his name into a bit of history. You know what I mean? Because he will. Even if it's 4 games and then he leaves and we never hear him again, he'll be a small town hero at Ellen Road. So. Yeah, I hear you 100%. I think it's a great shout.
Yeah, I think as well with Leeds, I think when we had Bielsa, especially after that first season in the Premier League, we were all a bit smug, weren't we? We're better than your average football club. We've got this genius, this maverick in charge. I think we felt almost like not above our station, but we almost felt superior. Yeah, we felt a bit superior, didn't we, in a way, because we were doing it right. It felt like we were doing it right, and we had this unbelievable style of football. And I think we've just got to dial it back a bit, because seeing some of the comments on social media and people really laying into Big Sam and taking the mick out of Tippy Tappy podcast that he does and everything like that. But look, we're in this position now. We're in this position. You've just kind of got to get on board with it, haven't you? And I think it'll be a good atmosphere at Ellen Road. I really do, when it's his first game, because it's the unknown. I think it would have been horrible if it had still been Gracia turning up. Nothing against him, but it just clearly wasn't working. I think it would have inspired no confidence at all. And I think when Allardyce turns up, and it's going to be, to see him marauding up and down the touchline at Leeds, it's going to be something else, isn't it?
It's going to be nuts. It is going to be nuts. For anybody, I would say of 30 years of age and up, I think it's a bit of a different appointment to the ones that are a bit younger. It's going to be surreal. But, I said the other day to a friend that watching him on that Tippy Tappy podcast was a bit cringy. Like he looks a bit old and a bit fragile now. But at the same time, this is a guy that was only a few years ago that was entrusted to be the manager of England. Now, if what had happened hadn't happened, there's nothing to say that Sam Allardyce isn't still England manager. And we need to just remember who we're dealing with here. Like this while he's not a Pep Guardiola, he's still in this country, as far as English managers go, one of our very best. Like he is.
Yeah.
Like that's the fact. People might not want to hear it, but as far as English managers go, he's up there now. Yeah, he's a bit older, and but given the circumstances that we find ourselves in, it's the best we can hope for. So absolutely, yeah, we should get behind it. Like, and it might not work. It might fail, and I'm not quite subscribed to what Tom was saying there about how it'll be if we go down. But you know what? That is ground zero right now. That's a worst case scenario. So we might as well get fully on board with this and hope that somehow we manage to pull it over the line. I think there's two things for me that we need to see this weekend to see Leeds potentially get ourselves out of this. One is keeping the score down at City on Saturday. We're not going there, and we're not going to win that game. We're not going to get a point, in my opinion, regardless of who's manager. Like, it just ain't going to happen. They are so good. It's got very little to do with how bad we are at this stage. They're just so good. Keep it under. I think anything under 4, I think we can be saying this is a decent turnaround. Because I honestly are thinking 8, 9, 10 if it were grass here.
Yeah.
And then Monday, we need Southampton to beat Forest.
Yeah.
If them two things can happen, I go into the Newcastle game thinking we stand a real chance now. We can do this. It's 2 home games. We could do it, Brownie. That's where I'm at.
Honestly, it just it destroys you, and then it just gives you that little bit of hope again, doesn't it? And you think, here we go again. Glenn, thank you for your comment, mate. I read today that Sam wanted to bring in Sammy Lee as his number 2. He can't, however, because Sammy Lee is on jury duty. How Leeds is that? Is that true?
That's hilarious if that's true.
God almighty. Have you seen the footage from Allardyce in charge at West Brom, and then Sammy Lee was asking Bielsa for his
jacket? Yeah, I seen it.
Class is that. Oh, what a team we were! What a team!
I mean, that's my last memory of Allardyce. Is Allardyce slumped on the bench as we absolutely smacked him at their place. Do you remember the own goal that Romain Sawyer scored that day?
Yeah, I mean,
do you remember? He just passed it back into his own goal, didn't he?
Yeah, it was about 30 yards out.
30 yards out. He didn't look, and he just passed it towards his keeper, and he put it back. And then Rafi scored that banger, didn't he? Alios scored a banger that day as well. We were so good.
Ruthless. So good. In the red shirt as well, weren't we? That
the burgundy thing.
Yeah. Dav, we were a story across the world. Now we're just another grim club. Do you feel that, Jason? Do you feel that we've kind of gone from this kind of status of being a progressive club, and now we really are just? I mean, I wouldn't even say just another club. We're beyond that. We're just this circus. We're an absolute circus.
I said to you the other day, I used the word smoke screen and a facade, and I feel like the smoke screen has completely dropped now. The little bits that were left of Bielsa and what he created have disappeared, and we're left with what we had before, which was Radrizzani playing Football Manager, really, like not having a clue what he's doing, really. And he'd employed somebody that equally didn't really know what he was doing. I mean, I've got a list here of the signings, and
brutal. Some of it is brutal. I mean, how much money is all that? If you top that up, it's just crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Matthew Pennington, Cassin Boy, Borthwick Jackson, J. Roy Grott, Andy Lonergan, Michelle Lasoga, Sabiki, Ideguchi, DeBock. I just go on and on and on of names that we signed. And I mean, some of these
pre-Bielsa that.
Some of these
pre-Bielsa signings were just grim.
I mean, even some of the Bielsa ones. I mean, Kiko Casilla in the Championship. I mean, at what point did anybody think that were going to be a good idea?
40 grand a week as well.
Yeah. Recruitment's tough, right? Like, let's not be too unfair. Recruitment is tough because you always run the risk that there's an injury or, it don't work out, player don't settle, especially when you're taking in foreign signings. But you just score so many own goals. I mean, Orta's legacy will be Marcelo Bielsa and then John Kevin Augustin, won't it? Like, they're really the polar opposites of sublime to the ridiculous, and then most of it in between will be towards the latter end of ridiculous. So,
you mentioned it earlier about how he was linked with Chelsea, and you think if anybody just looks at his record and the amount of money wasted, you would run for the hills. You would
not just Leeds either, mate.
Way.
Not just Leeds either. Like Middlesbrough fans can't stand him. And some of the signings that they made in the relegation season from the Premier League and then back in the Championship, horrendous, absolutely horrific.
Really brutal. Glenn, if the worst was to happen, would you look at Lee Bowyer for the Championship? He would certainly rally the troops. I think we privately spoke about that, didn't we? I can't remember. We didn't talk about it on the show, but I think we had a similar outlook. I think with Lee Bowyer, it was a case of, I remember being 16, watching him, scoring against AC Milan, and how much passion he had for the club and how he played. And when I heard the initial link with Lee Bowyer, I was like, yeah, let's do it. But then when you think about his record as manager, is he good enough? Is he for the right level? I'm not so sure.
He wouldn't get another single Premier League job. He wouldn't.
No, he wouldn't.
If he'd not played for Leeds United, it wouldn't have even been spoken about. Like, imagine he had his career at, I don't know, Everton, and then dropped into the Championship and bounced about a couple of clubs or whatever. He would not then be linked to Leeds. He wouldn't. It's as simple as that. For me, Bowyer was very opinionated at Birmingham under bad management, bad ownership, and all the rest of it. He showed an ability to be able to galvanise players to keep them up at a certain level and get them promoted out of League One under bad circumstances. There's no evidence, none whatsoever, that he would be the right manager to get us promoted out of the Championship or keep us up in the Premier League for me. No. Like, you've got to take the romance out of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Ted, thank you for your comment, mate. The perfect ending is beating Spurs to stay up in a must 3 points. Yeah, definitely we'll have that if that happens. This director of football situation, then, I'm kind of interested to see what's going to happen there, because surely that's even more important than picking the next manager at this point, because that's the whole direction of your club.
It's massive if that's the route that they're going to go down. I mean, not every club has a director of football. Most do nowadays at the very, very top end. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's quite a new thing to football. Is a director of football. I'd say the last 15 years, something like that. It's become a bit of a mainstay. Certainly from the Championship down, you don't have directors of football. No. You have head of recruitment, and then you have the manager who manages the club. It's still a bit old school. But yeah, if that's the direction that we're going to go down, it's vitally important. I mean, Dan Ashworth is a name that gets bandied about all the time, and some people won't even know who he is, but he's the guy that's run the project behind Brighton, and then he's the guy that's run the project behind Newcastle since the ownership's gone, taken over there. And look at the job he's done.
Yeah.
And that is the difference that a great director of football can make, because they run everything behind the scenes, from, the under 21s, under 23s, coaching and development, the players that they sign, the way that loan transfers going out are used, and they don't just send a kid on loan to X team. They look at the way that they play, the management style, the coaches that are going to be working with that player. Like, it's a massive job as the head of recruitment. If anything, it's more important than the manager's position in many ways. And they obviously have a direct relationship with the manager as well. And Bielsa managed up so well, and more and more we're seeing why he was so hurt when he was sacrimoniously thrown away to one side when it all went wrong, because we're just seeing now it weren't his fault. It weren't his fault. Yeah. He turned down these players that now have come in and weren't right. He turned down, and I mean, I'm not hating on Mark Rucker. I quite like Mark Rucker, but Mark Rucker, apparently, I've heard this week, was a signing that we could have made in January of last year under Bielsa, and Bielsa turned him down. Said, no, he's not right for my side.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we're now in this position again is shown to be right. He turned down Harry Winks. He turned down Dele Alli. He turned down Van der Beek. Well, he was right to do all of them.
Yeah, he was.
So where is the head of the director of football going and doing his job properly?
Exactly.
So yeah, massive position to recruit for, mate.
Agree. Andy, 4 points will be enough. And before Sam came in, we were going down, but now we have a slim chance. Come on, Sam, do it for the fans, indeed.
4 points will be enough if we keep the score down on Saturday and Forest don't beat Southampton. Yeah. Otherwise, it's not enough. 5 points will be needed.
Is it at Forest?
Yes.
Harlem, hoping he bangs heads. Don't think he will be shy. I hope not. Absolutely. Glenn, look how quickly Newcastle went for Dan Ashworth from Brighton after the takeover. Vital appointment, as Jason says. Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, the thing that worries me now is this space in between getting a new director of football in, and what happens building up, because now you've got to start planning ahead. But I think, like you say, everything's just off the table at the minute, isn't it? It's just Sam Allardyce, see what you can do. And
I honestly don't think it's even been thought about. I don't think there's any
No.
succession thinking right now. And I mean, in many ways, they probably can't be, because it makes such a difference what league we're in. And, with 4 games to go, we don't know. I mean, right now, we're still set outside the relegation zone, which is nuts. But that's the position. I don't know. But that's the position that we're in. I mean, just coming back to Dan Ashworth quickly, like I worked with the manager of Stockport, indirectly for a little bit of time, who was previously the under-23s manager at Brighton, and everything at that club is meticulous. I mean, I'm so jealous of Brighton, and this is a small club in a small city. Are they even a city? I don't know. Are they a town? I'm not sure, Brighton. But the way that their ownership and Dan Ashworth in particular has built that club out. I watched Brighton maybe 6 or 7 times the season that Leeds got promoted behind closed doors, and players like Evan Ferguson, Moises Caicedo, there's several others I watched 2 years before they even came into the first team, and you could see the quality. These lads had been picked up from Ireland, Ecuador leagues. This guy had the very best of the scouting network to make sure that they got the right players and brought them through in the right way. Brought Moises Caicedo, by the way, up from under the noses of Manchester United. Manchester United were after him, and Brighton managed to get him over the line. And look at what they've done. And, our direct kind of comparison to that is players that have now come and gone from Real Madrid's Castellet C and Castellet B and Barcelona's B and C teams and stuff like that. And some of it ain't going to go right. But my point is that, again, this is a comparison between somebody doing a really great job and somebody not doing a great job. Picking Gellart up as an example from a depleted Wigan is not smart. I could have told you to go and get Joe Gellart. Sam Greenwood is another example. It was one of Arsenal's very, very top kids, and he wanted to move back up north. It's not rocket science to go and make them signings. But then look at some of the ones that have gone the other way. There's several of them.
Some of the failed ones, though, chasing after De Ketelaere all summer, and chasing after Gakpo, and
Hollywood.
What was the Argentinian Rodrigo de Paul in the first summer? It was for the whole bloody summer, wasn't it? Like, after banging on the door, and it didn't happen. So whoever comes in, what's annoying is the ownership, though, because if you've got half and half. Director of football, anybody worth the salt is going to be looking at that going, not so sure about that, because what's the investment level? What kind of setup are we going to have? That needs to be sorted out. I mean, I like the sound of that Parag Marath, who, runs the 49ers and everything. I mean, he sounds like a switched on guy. I'd like to see someone come in like that, who, I'm not saying director of football, but to run it and get a director of football in, and let's see what we can do.
All comes down to who owns us, Brownie. It all comes down to what situation Rads leaves us in at the end of the season. I think let's just take it in bite-sized chunks. Let's deal with this next 4 games first, and then we'll digress and pull apart all that. I'll do a bit more study for you, and we'll. I think we need to set up a few shows, an Orta history kind of session. We could easily do an hour just on Victor Orta. Then we can do it on the future Championship or Premier League. There's so much content we can do on that.
endless material with this club. Just to get your thoughts, mate, on the hotel video, players walking past the fans. A lot of things come out since. I think the boy said, I did meet players and pictures and everything like that. What did you make of that coming out? And is it not just the icing on the cake, really, for the kind of weekend it was? Did you read too much into it? I mean, what did you make of it?
I think if we win the game, I don't even think you hear about it. That's what I think. news like that carries so fast. When I saw it, I didn't. It made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I also know that you can only tell so much without any context, you know. And I weren't surprised when I then heard that some of the lads had, stopped and spoke to him and signed stuff for him and all the rest of it beforehand. Again, I think this is a management thing. If I was the manager of a set of footballers, I would be saying, while you walk through that area, you do not get your phones out. Do you understand? That's my rule. You do not get out. But Gracia is weak as piss. Like, let's be fair. That's how I see it. I bet the players are all on the phones at half time and all the rest of it. Like, that'd be my rules, but that's down to the manager setting an expectation and allowing something like that to happen. Because if they're not all on their phones, it doesn't look half as bad as what it did. The heads would be up, they'd be looking around, they'd be smiling, they'd be waving, they'd be, giving little high fives, but they're engrossed in what they're engrossed into, and they maybe are instructed to not participate in anything at that particular time. I've heard reports that it was after the game, some that it was before the game. I'm led to believe that it was before the game now.
Yeah, I think it was before.
Again, makes it a little bit better because, again, the focus, they're told not to on that particular journey, that they're told not to. So, yeah, I don't think you can read too much into it. I think it's the modern day footballer is a little bit more disconnected from it, which is sad, but it's the truth. And, I don't believe if you were to run that back and a Sam, and again, I'm not blowing smoke up Sam's backside, but he'll come from a different generation. I think that would be exactly his rule. You don't have your phones on the coach. You can have them out. Fine. Not at halftime, not before the game, not until after I've had my debrief after the game, something like that. He'll have a set of rules like that, whereas I think Grassy is probably just, no problem, get your phone out. I can just see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple of things, tidbits before we wrap up. Jack Harrison pictured after the game, I think it was Joe, who got sent a video, and when you looked at that, it was like something out of a movie. It was like tragic to watch. Jack Harrison sat on the bench on his own, full kit, clearly not for the cameras type of thing. I mean, you can't help but look at that and go, there is something horribly wrong. Not just in the club, but the dressing room specifically. There is something broken. How has it got to that?
I've seen some people say it's the same as when Pontus did it. It's nothing like when Pontus did it. Pontus went and sat behind the goal, purposely in kind of position to be photographed. I don't think so. I think that was a lad that it probably went up in flames in the dressing room after the game. Some people have had certain stuff to say, and some people have probably shown no care at all for what it's about. And Jack needed a couple of minutes to himself and took himself out to an empty stadium. Because bear in mind, I think the fans had left like 10 minutes earlier than that. Like, he had no idea that anybody were left in that stadium and just needed a couple of moments to himself. He'd not even had a shower, the poor lad. Yes. So, I've had my fair bit to say about Jack and his performances and his confidence and all the rest of it this season, but I do believe he cares. I've always believed he cared. And, you can see that. So, again, I don't think there's anything malicious in that. I think exactly what you say, in that, it comes from a position of probably pure frustration and upset. I'm convinced that something big happened at Palace at half-time.
Huge.
Way more. It just answers all the kind of questions of what happened in that second half and the capitulation, the lack of effort and fight since and then. And apparently somebody came out on social media and said that they'll tell all on the 1st of June.
Oh my God.
Somebody that's in the know to it, apparently.
I hope so. I think we deserve to know.
Yeah,
to be honest,
we deserve to know.
I normally say, you know what, behind closed walls, everything that, fine, loads of stuff goes on. For this, that has effectively torpedoed the entire season and possibly destroyed the club.
Yeah.
I would like to know, truthfully, what happened at halftime from that game.
Yeah, something happened.
I mean, there's even rumours today. I'm seeing articles online about there's a divide between the young players and the elder players. Young players thinking there's not enough leadership. I mean,
guess what that comes down to, though, Brownie? Bad recruitment. again, because the squad balance is all over the place. It's so wrong. We don't have any leaders.
No.
We don't.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Jason, have we covered everything off? Is there anything else we need to touch on before we wrap up?
I think so. It's been a little bit chaos for me tonight. I do apologise. I've got like my tea sat here on the side. I came in a little bit late. My missus has had a bit of a tough day as well. So like I were all over the place. Then I came in late and so I think so.
I mean, talk about Leeds for an hour, the happiest subject in the world.
I do it for the fans. You know, because it's, you know, I know people love hearing it, don't they? They just do. They love hearing people talk about this, and you know, as Leeds fans, it means so much to us that, I mean, for me, I can't take myself away from it. When I finish this now, and you know, I within the next hour, I'll be back on watching content again because I want to understand what I'm feeling emotionally. I think is the only way I can explain it. I just hope by the grace of God that Sam can come in and do the unimaginable. We can see the pitch invasion on the final day and it all go up. And, you know, do you remember when West Brom did the Great Escape under Brian Robson?
Yeah.
That's what I hope I can see on my
on the dancing with Somerville and Nonto at the end, you know, getting his
giving the shuffle.
Like, come on. Yeah.
I just hope, because I don't subscribe to it at all that it's good that we go down. I don't, and I won't. I am not going to be revisioning on that at all. I think it will be horrific for us for so many reasons, which we'll cover later again. But that for me, it is vital that we stay up.
Yeah, no, 100%. Glenn, new subscriber lads, interesting chat. Cheers, guys. Much appreciated, guys. If you've enjoyed the video, please do smash a like. Also, subscribe to the channel for more Leeds United content and content on other teams across West Yorkshire as well. Jason, really appreciate it, mate. Thank you for your time once again. We'll be back at some point. I've been Steven Browne. Thank you very much for watching.